Hello sports fans, welcome to Super Sports Central. Today, we're going to go over my final 2025 UFL power rankings. So the UFL season is now officially over, so here are my rankings after the season. And starting off 8th or last in my power rankings, I've got the Brahmas. So the Brahmas, they're ranked number 8 in my power rankings after they just had a terrible season. And this was a really disappointing year for the Brahmas. They were expected to be pretty good. They were coming off a championship game appearance, they won the XFL conference, and they were expected to be quite good once again. In fact, I picked them to make the championship game again and win the XFL conference, but clearly that did not happen. Instead, the Brahmas were the worst team in the UFL, finishing just 1-9, although their one win was against the eventual champs in the Defenders. But that's pretty much the only positive thing for the Brahmas this season. Their offense was really disappointing, and Kellen Mond did not live up to expectations. The offense and defense were both worst in the UFL, and they finished with a league worst minus 138 point differential. But it's definitely going to be an interesting offseason for the Brahmas. They've got some big decisions to make. But after a really disappointing year, they were just terrible all around, and they finished ranked number 8 in my power rankings. 7th, I've got the Showboats. So the Showboats, they finished season ranked number 7, and they're another team that had a disappointing season. They went just 2-8, and they finished last in the USFL conference. And the biggest problem for the Showboats this season was quarterback play. Their quarterback play was consistent, but consistently awful. And that's really what held this team back. They had a decent run game and a solid group of receivers, but the quarterbacks were just terrible. E.J. Perry led the league in interceptions, despite only playing in 6 games. Troy Williams was good as a scrambler, but could not throw the ball. And Dresser Wynn had a couple of solid games, but then when the team went back to him in weeks 9 and week 10, he was just not good. But I definitely think this could have been a better season for the Showboats, especially if they didn't go through a mid-season coaching switch, with Ken Wisenhunt stepping down. But the Showboats, it's their second straight season at winning just 2 games as they went 2-8, and they finished the season ranked number 7 in my power rankings. Coming in at number 6, I've got the Roughnecks. So the Roughnecks come in at number 6 after they finished season 5-5. And the Roughnecks, they actually had a solid season. They started off the year on a really bad note. They got destroyed by the Battlehawks, and they were 1-2 in their first 3 games. But then they found quarterback J.O. McClendon. And once he became the team's starting quarterback, he really saved their season. As even though McClendon started just 6 games, he still finished 3rd in the league in passing yards with 1,464. And in fact, once McClendon became the Roughnecks starting quarterback, the Roughnecks went 4-2. And they had a chance to make the playoffs, although just missed out. But this was a completely different team once McClendon took over. The Roughnecks should definitely bring him back for next season, and he could lead a very dangerous Roughnecks team. But the Roughnecks, they went 5-5, a decent year for them, and they ended the year on a good note, winning their last 2 games and 4 of their last 6. But the Roughnecks, they enter at number 6, although I could understand having them 5th. But I've got the Roughnecks finishing at number 6. Number 5, I've got the Renegades. So the Renegades come in at number 5 after they're another team went 5-5. And this was a solid year for the Renegades. They got off to a great start, going 3-1 in their first 4 games. But after that, they weren't great, going just 2-6 the rest of the way. And their 2 wins during that stretch came against the 2 worst teams in the UFL, the Showboats and the Brahmas. Quarterback Luis Perez had a good year, leading the league in passing yards with 2,298, although he had just 9 touchdown passes, and he was tied for the league lead with 5 receptions. But the Renegades, they had a pretty good year. They went 500, which is progress from last year where they went 4-6. But they missed the playoffs, and when you look at their 5-5 record, it's actually pretty disappointing considering they started the year 3-1. But an okay year for the Renegades. Some ups and downs, a good start, not a great finish. But the Renegades, I've got them at number 5. Number 4, I've got the Stallions. So the Stallions enter at number 4. They finished season 7-4, including the playoffs. They didn't get their 4-peat, and it's their first time in the modern era where they've been in the league and did not win it. But this was still a good season for the Stallions. It was a tough season, but a good season. And the reason I say it was a tough season is the Stallions, they just went through so many injuries. And it started at the quarterback position. They had 5 different quarterbacks play at some point this season. Their secondary also had a lot of injuries, plus they were really banged up along the offensive and defensive lines. But despite all those injuries, the Stallions, they still made the playoffs. They ended up losing 44-29. But in the playoff game, they still played somewhat well, especially offensively, after they turned to Matt Corral at quarterback. And Deion Kane also had a good game in the playoffs with over 120 yards. But it was their defense that was not good, allowing 44 points. But the Stallions, they were still a great team. I think if they were fully healthy, they could have been even better. But the Stallions, they fall short of a championship, but still a very good year. Skip Holtz did a great job helping the Stallions be at least decent offensively with 5 different quarterbacks. And while they don't win the title, they still had a good year, and I've got the Stallions at number 4, although I could understand the argument to have them at number 3. Third, I've got the Battlehawks. So the Battlehawks come in at number 3. They had the best regular season record at 8-2, but were awful in the playoffs and fell short in the playoffs for the second straight year. Now, the Battlehawks, they were in a tough spot in their playoff game because the way the defenders played it, which was very good for the defenders, credit to them, but the defenders, they sold out to stop the run and pressure Max Duggan, and the Battlehawks, they just couldn't protect Max Duggan, and Duggan is just not good enough to win the game, strictly with what he can do as a passer. But then the Battlehawks, they made the quarterback switch going to Brandon Silvers, who's actually decent at throwing the ball, and he had a good drive and then got hurt, and they were forced to go back to Max Duggan, and clearly that did not go well. But all things considered, I do think this was a pretty good year for the Battlehawks. They're 8 wins in a season, the most in franchise history, and they had a great regular season. Now, they were bad in the playoffs, which is why I have them at number 3, but it's still a pretty good year for St. Louis. Coming in at number 2, I've got the Panthers. So the Panthers, they're at number 2, and I think they had a great year. They went 6-4 in the regular season, and they went to Birmingham and beat the Stallions in the semifinal game before they got destroyed in the championship. But this was a great year for the Panthers. Quarterback Bryce Perkins won Offensive Player of the Year and questionably won MVP, and I say questionably because I think it should have gone to Jordan Ta'amu, although not trying to discredit the season Perkins had because he had a great year. But Perkins, he had a really good Panthers offense, and we really got to see just how good they were in the playoffs. They scored 44 in the USFL Conference title game, and then despite losing by 24 in the UFL Championship game, their offense was still great with 34 points, and Perkins did a great game with 338 yards and 4 touchdowns. Now, obviously, they lost the championship because their defense couldn't stop literally anything, allowing 58 points. But I still think this is a really good year for the Panthers. It is their best season of the modern era, and I've got them finishing at number 2 in my power rankings. And coming in at number 1, it's obviously the champs, the DC Defenders. The Defenders, they're number 1, they won the league championship, and they had a great season. Led by Coach of the Year Shannon Harris, they went 6-4 in the regular season, but once they got to the playoffs, they were on a whole nother level. They absolutely dominated the Battlehawks in the XFL Conference Championship game, winning 36-18, and in the UFL title game, they had a historic performance. Their offense put up a UFL record 58 points, and they had 580 total yards, and they also scored points on every single drive. They went a perfect 10 for 10, with 8 touchdowns and 2 field goals. And quarterback Jordan Ta'amu, who I just said I think should have been the regular season MVP, he had one of the greatest modern spring football performances in the UFL title game, as he set a UFL record with 390 passing yards, also had 4 touchdowns through the air and 1 on the ground. And he obviously won championship game MVP. And also shout out to receiver Jaden Mickens, who in the championship game went for 6 catches for 132 yards and got in the end zone. But in the 2 playoff games, the Defenders' offense combined for 92 points, 968 total yards of offense, and they scored points on 17 of their 20 drives, with 12 of those 17 scoring drives being touchdown drives. But an unreal 2-game stretch for the Defenders in the playoffs. They had a great season, they won their first ever championship, and obviously they finished the year ranked number 1 in my power rankings. But those are my final 2025 UFL power rankings. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, turn notifications. I do my best as often as possible, and I will see you in the next video.